Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be looking at the February edition of Book of the Month. And this one was a weird ride. I didn't know what to expect from this. I was told many different things, and it still managed to surprise me in a bunch of different ways. It had spooks, it had nostalgia, it had humour, it was kind of a parody, but kind of took itself a little bit seriously at the same time, and that is Meddling Kids. This was written by Edgar Cantero? I think that's how you pronounce the name? Edgar Cantero. That's what I'm going with. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, please correct me. But yeah, Meddling Kids was very weird. It was... I'm sorry for the state that the book is in. I ordered it secondhand, so this is the state that it came in. So yes. This was a very odd read, because I was told so many different things, and I'd read so many different things, but I didn't want to look into spoilers. So yeah, it kind of, obviously by the name and very clearly by the front cover, it is a parody of the old mystery Scooby-Doo style gang that we are very much used to, and that's kind of what drew me to it, because Scooby-Doo was one of my favourites growing up. It's probably why I love paranormal tropes so much now. I mean, I remember being about, I don't want to say 3 because that sounds really young, but at the same time it could be 3 or 4. I remember the first ever episode of Scooby-Doo I have ever seen. I remember what episode it was, I remember where I was, I remember falling in love with it, and I'm still in love with it now. But regardless, I am going off track, yet again. It does play on those Scooby-Doo tropes, so I was introduced to it like that. But then it also has an element of the Stranger Things H.P. Lovecraft element, where you're not actually sure if what's going on is really supernatural or if it's something that's been hyped up in their mind so much as when they were kids, and now they have to go back and solve the mystery to see if it really was a guy in the mask or if there was something much darker. And it doesn't take itself too seriously. It understands that it's a parody, it understands when to have a laugh, it plays up the tropes in a really fun way, but at the same time still manages to put some really dark issues in there that are very real. I am not going to give any spoilers. I'm not going to tell you whether it is actually supernatural or if it is something that is just a guy in the mask kind of thing. I'm not going to tell you, because I had no idea going in, and it never gives a straight answer until the very end. So it keeps you guessing. You're like, well, okay, that could have been done by some evil mastermind kind of thing. We've seen how these elements have been done before, and they have been done by supernatural entities, but also by people who are just very crafty. So where's it going? You don't know, and that's what I love, is that even though it does make fun of itself, that it does make fun of so many things that we're used to, it still manages to give a good mystery, and it does keep you guessing. And some of the stuff that happens is really grim. Let's backtrack a little bit. So we have the group that when they were kids, they were known as the summer holiday detective agency or something like that, because they would meet up in the same town every summer holidays, and there would be a mystery for them to solve. And yes, they had the dog along as well. You had the brainiac, you had the leader, you had the cowardly guy. Really, camera, are you gonna phase out on me now? So they've grown up with this whole thing of we're pretty damn cool, until the last summer where things take a dark turn and it really affects them. They think they've solved the mystery, they think they've caught the bad guy, but something was never quite right, and they just can't put their finger on it because they're kids. They can't figure out what could be wrong because they caught the bad guy. It should be the end of it, so why isn't it? Jump forward like 15 or so years, they're all grown up now, they've all gone their separate ways. One of them, if this isn't a spoiler, it's on the front cover, one of them isn't around anymore. That's a different story altogether. And they're all affected in some way. They never quite recovered from what happened. So naturally they decide, let's get the gang back together. Let's go back to this place. Let's solve this mystery once and for all. Let's find out if these nightmares that are haunting us are really haunting us or if it's just something we need to get over. And that's where it really gets juicy. Because they do go back to this town, they do have to open up the case again, they do have to look over everything that they've already solved, but now they're solving it as adults rather than kids, so it's a whole new perspective. But as I said, it's also being a parody and taking the absolute mick out of itself. The characters are so fun. I mean, Andy is just this combination, I suppose. I mean, you first read her sort of description and you think, oh, she's going to be the Velma of the group, but then it turns out that she's this full-on tomboy that can beat you down in like 2 seconds flat and you won't even know what's happening. But then you've got Kerry, who, you know, you read her description with the long red hair and like, you know, the feminine wiles, and you're thinking, okay, we have our Daphne. But then no, she's more the Velma character because she's got a hell of a brain on her and just this wit. And then we have Nate, who is so switched on with what's happening around him, but he doesn't want to respond to it because of the way that he's been affected by that night. He doesn't trust his own judgment. And Tim, who's just a good boy, Tim the dog, who's just a good boy. They take those tropes and they twist them, so you do have original characters even if they are sort of mashups of ones that we've already kind of seen before. The descriptions are really well done. You really get a feel of the dread and the tension and the uncertainty in the air. It's really well handled and well balanced, even if it is very fast moving. They never stay in one place for long, which I suppose again does go back to the old tropes of, oh, we found one clue here, therefore we're done and we can move on. It's like one clue per area, which doesn't happen in real life, but it's not trying to be real life, so I can let it slide. Something that I do find difficult with this book though is the narrative. And by that I mean it seems to change its style like that with no warning and no real reason. So one minute you'll be reading it as, let's see if I can find examples for you. So one minute you'll just be reading it like this, just your standard normal prose, just in paragraphs, it's all good, speech marks, you're sorted. And then out of nowhere it changes to a script. And I mean a script, like full on, like you're reading a screenplay. Camera, yeah, like you're reading a screenplay. And I don't know whether that's to hammer home the point of, hey, I'm making fun of detective shows or nostalgic things or anything like that, but there's no real reason behind it, and it does it so quickly. It changes mid-paragraph. You'll be reading a script and suddenly it'll go back to regular prose, and then they'll have, you know, paragraph, 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 and then like maybe 3 lines of like a script and then back to regular, and it's really disorientating. I guess the writer didn't want to make it sound like, and then he said this and then she said this, and because there's a lot of people to deal with, but you could just have a different voice for the characters rather than putting it in a script. We would still get the idea. I mean, a lot of these characters do have verbal quirks, so you know who's talking. That would have been just fine. I don't get why the change has to happen. It can be a little disorientating and it can bring you out of the moment, especially when they were just about to explore something and you're like, well, now I'm not getting a description for the place because I'm reading this script rather than a story. That's my only real nitpick with it, is that it doesn't seem to know what kind of style it wants to be, and it can be a little bit all over the place as a result. But other than that, the story, the characters, the descriptions, the general setup, and the way it can have a laugh and make fun of itself, I do really appreciate that. It's well done. In a way, I wish I could talk about spoilers with you, because there's so much to unpack here, especially when you do figure out what's going on and you do, you know, uncover the truth of whether it's someone, you know, in a mask who's just very handy with machinery, or if it is actually a paranormal entity. I really want to say, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to be good. But it's just so bizarre. I mean, I will be 100% honest, I wasn't completely on board with the way this ended. I'm aware that there is a sort of sequel, which is like, I think it's a novella that takes place after this, but focuses on somebody else's perspective. So I'm curious to see if that's gonna maybe change my mind, but it's a great book. It's just written very oddly in parts, and I'm not completely on board with the ending, but I think that's just a personal thing. They took time to develop the characters, they took time to set up the scene without being overly expositional. They gave some great development. I mean, some of the issues that these characters go through, whether it's, you know, trying to deal with your mental state, trying to figure out your, you know, your state of being, your sexuality, your facing your demons, it's really good. It's really well written in that sense. I just wish it had stuck to a style. But yeah, all in all, Meddling Kids, I really enjoyed this book. Will I be rereading it anytime soon? Probably not. But will I take a look at it and think, yeah, I'll pick that up again? Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm not in a rush to reread it, but I know I will want to in the future once I've processed it. I do highly recommend it. If you like your mystery whodunits with elements of could be supernatural, could not be, then this is definitely the book for you, especially if you like a bit of a parody element to it where it does have fun. I definitely recommend it. But yes, I'm gonna leave it here. So I hope you're doing well, I hope you're staying safe, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye, my scribblers.